Welcome to Downtown. I'm your host, Robbie Haig. Thank you for being here. Today on Downtown, we will be talking with Matt Hynoone from Hynoone Canine, and also to Andy Cerner. So welcome to the show. I'm so pleased that you came here.
Thank you for having us.
We're thrilled to have you here. Cindy, who we talked to before, was wonderful about telling us that she complimented you greatly about what you do with the animals. So tell me a little bit about you. Just a little background, why and where and.
Basically, I've been training dogs for almost 20 years now. I've been a master instructor for a better part of 17 years. We have various types of dogs that we train, but by far and away the most important dogs at this point in my life, and probably hopefully forever, are the PTSD dogs we provide for veterans.
How did you ever get into this?
Actually, it was my father that really started for me. My father was a 100% disabled Korean War veteran, and I actually trained the dog to basically help mitigate symptoms of PTSD.
Really?
When we moved out of the house. I was very worried about him living by himself, even though that we were adults at that point, didn't need to be home. PTSD is a very difficult thing for a lot of people to understand or to deal with. And so one of the big problems I was having with my father was seclusion. He wasn't getting out of the house. He was regressing quite a bit. And so what I did is we actually gave him the family dog, which happened to be a 130-pound Mastiff from Italy.
Whoa.
It's a pretty tough, sizable dog. And not exactly the ideal service dog, but that was his buddy. And so one of the things I taught the dog to do was to steal the blankets off of his bed every morning and drag it to the front door.
Really?
I didn't explain to my father why I did that, because the other thing about people with PTSD is you can't tell them they have to want to do things. And especially my father. So what we did is I basically left him alone for about a week or so dealing with this every morning, and he got extremely frustrated and called me up and explained to me that something had to be done about it. The dog was wonderfully trained. He said he did everything else perfectly. He just couldn't understand why he would agitate him every morning. And I ignored him for a few days or whatever and let him kind of sweat it out. And finally he calls me up, and it was the best conversation ever. He just said, "I figured out what's going on with the dog. He needs to go for a walk."
Very good.
I said, I was just blown. I said, "Oh wow!" I said, "That's amazing." That you put that together. I said, "You're probably right."
Yeah.
And so little by little, my father started just walking from Trunk River in Falmouth down to Woods Hole. He couldn't make the whole trek right off the bat. He was, he had heart problems and things like that. So it took him a while to build up enough stamina to do so. But eventually, it got him out of the house. He was talking to people that were coming off the boats and all things he would never do.
Really?
And so I just realized the power of what the dog brings out of him. It's amazing how a lot of these veterans, they put the dogs before themselves. They really do. And the reason I think it's so successful is that the type of dogs, the unconditional love and the interaction with them is just second to none. So
it's amazing what love can do.
Yeah, so we've been doing this for quite some time, and this is strictly all we do is train dogs.
Yeah. And is there a certain type of dog that you train?
No, we don't believe in any specific breed. There are characteristics that we look for in the specific dog.
Okay.
We tend to work with a lot of rescues. I just think it's a perfect match between the dog helping the veteran helping the dog. There's a lot of dogs out there that need a job and need a home, and you're hard-pressed to find anybody that's going to take better care of a dog than a veteran. It's just amazing seeing the finished product with these men and women that are dealing with the service animals.
And Andy, this is your dog that you brought in today.
Correct.
I thank you for that.
Yes.
So
No
he has been trained for you?
Yes, he was actually, I got him when he was 8 weeks old, and he was my personal dog. I got him for the therapy reasons, just to have a friend. And I was in therapy for PTSD, and my counselor told me about this program called Heroes in Transition. And so she gave me Cindy's number, and I called her and we got everything rolling with the service dog program, and then I met with Matt and then started training with him. And about 8 months later, he's been fully trained service dog.
He's a beautiful animal.
Thank you.
He's gorgeous. So you said you got him at 8 weeks old?
Yes.
Do you get like newborns?
We get them at all different stages. Nowadays, we tend to get them closer to between 1 year and 2 years of age because time is not on our side. With all the things that we do, we try never to lose focus of the end result here. And really what we're fighting here is suicide. And so it's very serious, especially because it's not tangible. It's not something that the average person can even understand. So even in a room full of people, a lot of our veterans feel completely alone.
It's certainly not recognizable.
No, and I think that just makes it that much harder.
Sure.
Because the other thing I've noticed about veterans is they're pretty stubborn.
Really?
They don't ask for help like the rest of us. They're a different breed for sure. And I just think it's time that we return the favor. It's time to do right by our men and women that have served for us.
I'm totally with you. And Andy, you mentioned something about numbers of deaths in...
Yes, there's 22 veterans a day that commit suicide.
Wow.
Every day, 365 days a year.
Wow.
A guy from my unit that we deployed with just lost his battle a couple weeks ago. And so that hit home because now it's happening to the guys that we deployed with. And you hear about it every day on social media. And we just need it to stop. And these dogs are step one.
Right. And I'm sure the dog will do all he can to keep you safe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tell us a little more about the dogs and how you train them. And
so for us, the first hurdle that we run into is standards. There is no standards and practices. Okay. So we see a lot of, for lack of a better term, fake service dogs out there, and it's very difficult for certain entities to decipher. Yes,
fake service dogs. That is amazing.
On average, 50% or better of the dogs that you see out there are not real service dogs. Really? For one reason or another, people just think it's not a big deal to throw a vest on a dog and bring them out in public if the dog just happens to be friendly. The problem that that causes is, although that dog may be friendly, when that dog is not trained properly, they can get out of sorts from a loud noise going off, difficulty with dealing with a certain type of person. There's a lot of things that dogs have to learn to get over. One of the big things that sets dogs off is facial obstructions. Anything from a very dark colored hat that's covering your eyes, sunglasses, scarves over the face. Dogs, they read faces very well. And so when that's taken away from them, they can be a little standoffish. And a dog that's not trained rigorously enough to be a service dog could turn into a disaster. And then that sets a bad precedent for the entire industry as a whole.
Sure.
And so a lot of our veterans and stuff have to suffer the consequences where business owners aren't savvy to the law and understanding. Like a lot of them think that you can kick the dog out for allergies or different things like that, and that's 100% against the law on the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Really?
That being said, we have a very high standard of the pets that we train, let alone our service dogs. And so what we do with the dogs that's very unique is that we put them through a series of tests where we drop things and loud noises and different environmental changes. And my belief since the beginning of my career with training is that the obedience that we teach the dog should be a constant in a land full of variables. So everything in the world for that dog can change, but you must pay attention to the obedience that has been taught to you will keep you safe and will absolve you of any responsibility of your environment. And so the more that we started to test that theory, the more successful we've become in all facets of training. It's really quite something to see a dog that makes that turn. And then the trade-off for that is the dog becomes very in tune with their handler. They're basically looking at them to how to handle everything in life. Dogs only have a maximum mental capacity of a 3-year-old human child.
Really?
So they don't like having too many options. I watch this happen with a lot of pet owners when we're training those dogs, and they become a disaster because people give them the run of the house. They just let them be quote-unquote a dog. And that's actually pure misery for a lot of dogs because most homes are set up for a prey animal, not a predator. Meaning a wolf or something like that, they live in a den, one way in, one way out. So the home has too many orifices for the dog to theoretically guard. And so it creates a lot of hectic behaviors out of the dogs.
Okay.
So the more
That makes
obedience we
sense.
put into them, it teaches them to settle down. That's not part of your job that is needed.
Yeah.
And so a service dog is something completely different. We have hundreds of hours into these dogs in multitude of environments to make sure that they're going to respond uniform to everything that we've taught them.
And how long do you have, generally speaking, how long do you have to train the dog? I'm sure you have a lot of people waiting for
Oh yeah,
dogs.
oh yeah. The number's growing by the day. Typically, we like to see 120, 140 hours of training into the dog before we'll actually certify them as a service animal. But it all varies depending on how much training they've come with, how fast the dog can adapt. It's just a general rule. It's not an exact science. Some dogs are smarter than others, just like some people are smarter than others. But ultimately, we just want to see.
Isn't that the truth?
We just want to see trustworthy behavior with the dogs. And one of the nice things about Cindy and Ken Jones is the way that they've allowed me to run this program. Initially, they wanted me to come on and just train the dogs and say see you later with the veterans, but they've given me the permission to stay on indefinitely. So I get to watch these dogs as they develop over the years and things like that. And a lot of our veterans like to do more advanced training with the dogs, and so it's ongoing. It's to their discretion what they would like to teach the dog. And so each dog that we train is not the same as the next. They're actually custom trained for each one of our veterans.
Well, Cindy and Ken Jones hold you in the highest of regard.
The feeling was mutual, for sure.
That's wonderful. And that's the way you get something really done.
Well, we truly believe we're a family. We are in every sense of the word. All of our missions are the same, and we pride ourselves in complete transparency.
And when you give a dog to a veteran, does the family continue?
You better believe it.
Wonderful.
It actually grows.
And when the dog has the vest on, he knows he's working.
Absolutely. When I take it off, he's just another happy dog.
Wow, that is amazing.
The obedience is still there.
The obedience is there.
But
okay.
he can say hi and go play
Really?
fetch and everything like that. Wow. As soon as the vest goes on, he knows it's time to work.
Yeah, early on we started that. I just didn't want the dogs getting burnt out. I've seen a lot of people that overtrain the dogs or push them too far. You got to understand they only have a mental capacity of a 3-year-old child. So while they like rules and structure and things like that, concentrating on things for an extended period of time is very difficult on them. Even though it may look like they're doing nothing, that's like asking a 3-year-old to sit down and study something for an hour or more. It's not that easy.
No,
so it's
well, I'm amazed that the dog is so
Oh yeah, the average person can't even get their pet to
wonderful.
lay down and relax in a new
I
environment.
don't know of a 3-year-old who can do
Yeah,
this.
right.
And this is nothing for him. He can
Really?
go hours
Yeah.
without even making a peep.
Amazing.
In the mall, anywhere Andy goes, he's the same dog no matter where you see him.
And Andy, how does he know when you're having a problem?
He's in tune to me. He's always checking in. Usually I'll bend down and just start petting him, and then he just leans right into me, and he knows.
Is there some sort of aura for
So it can be odor driven.
Okay.
Typically what happens with a dog is the more in tune the dog is with the owner, the easier these symptoms are for the dog to navigate. And so that's why the obedience has to be such a high standard, because what we run into a lot, whether when I'm out training with the dogs prior to them becoming service dogs or when they're actually out with our veterans, is the general public not understanding that these are not to be touched in any circumstance. When that vest is on that dog or whatever, it doesn't matter what you think is going on.
Yeah.
Very few people actually understand the dog world as a whole and understand how detrimental it is to the dog's success when you start impeding on it like that, whether it's somebody coming up and trying to give the dog a treat, a pat on the head. They only have the mental capacity of a 3-year-old, so it can take away from the training. They want to have fun from time to time, and it's not that the job isn't fun to them when they're working with their handler, but they are prone to getting distracted rather easily.
And they're protective.
Yeah, and so we work very hard to keep them from doing that, but after a certain period of time, it can start to erode the training, and it's really an insult to myself and my veterans, when this happens over and over again, to all the hard work we put in. The difficulty for us is that the general public just doesn't know. It's not malicious. It's not. I completely understand it from both sides, but we just really want to get the word out there to understand that it's not an accident that the dog is better trained than any dog you've ever seen.
Yeah.
We log a lot of hours. There's no magic wand or secret tricks. It's time and dedication for sure.
And someone when I first saw the dog, I just wanted to go over and pat him. I mean, he's just gentle and kind.
Exactly, and that's one of the hard parts. I said,
Right,
I said
yeah.
it would almost be easy if the dogs are foaming at the mouth. I said,
Really?
just,
If you could give the dog a hint
right,
of something to do.
They're all very sweet dogs, and that's a lot of the reason why we picked them. There's varying breeds that could do the work, like pit bulls or Rottweilers and things like that. And I have no problem with any of those breeds. The biggest problem I run into with those breeds is the general public's disposition on it. And so I don't want the veterans having to defend their dog. Unfortunately, we live in a day and age where people are still pretty ignorant about a lot of things.
Absolutely.
And so even though they have no experience, a lot of people consider themselves experts, believe it or not. And,
well, we hear that all the time.
Yeah, which breaks my heart because pit bulls are very
Hello.
trainable dogs.
Really?
Absolutely. We use them for all types of stuff now. And
Really?
it's only now that they're starting to get some of the good press that they deserve.
Very good.
But yeah, no, as far as the dogs go, we just look for a standard type of dog, personality-wise and trainability-wise. Breed is irrelevant. The dog's just as much an individual as the handler they're going to be assigned to.
And if you are training a dog and you find something about him that he's not going to make it,
somebody gets a really well-trained, very expensive pet.
because you do have to let them go.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no gray area with this. This is high stakes.
Yeah.
Like I said, at the end of the day, we're fighting suicide here. That's the long and short
And
of it.
that's something that we really want to get out there.
Absolutely.
know?
I think, and that's
It's
where
no joke.
the big disconnect with a lot of civilians and veterans. It's got to be very difficult. I know a lot of my veterans personally, and it's very difficult for me. My whole family's military. My father, my mother. Anyway, so I understand it much better than the average civilian. But I think that disconnect causes a little bit of a rift where people just seem ungrateful. And I don't think that a lot of people mean to be that way.
Right.
But when they don't know the first step of what to do to help veterans, we just get lost in our own lives nowadays. Everybody's so busy and so
absolutely.
rapid pace that we forget to take a step back and really be thankful for the people that, without our veterans, we would have nothing. And I think a lot of people
Our country
lose.
would mean nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely
Patriotism is
nothing.
not just flying a flag or putting a bumper
No.
sticker on your car.
No.
You got to get out there and do something.
And as a matter of fact, with what's going on with there's a lot of junk going on TV with the new presidential thing, but each of them talks about how we have to get more in touch with our veterans.
Absolutely.
And do much more for them.
The other thing is I think people think it's new. PTSD is not new.
No.
It's just they finally put a word to it. My father's generation, he was a Korean War vet, and basically people just thought he was making it up, or
Sure.
and that's really painful for somebody that put their life on the line for the good of the country, and people that may not even like them.
Right.
How many people can you say that about? And
Very,
that's what I just
very
want
good.
people just to take a step back, politics aside, and just understand how special these individuals are to do this for us without ever meeting us.
We have one of the things that we used to do back a ways, and I go back a ways. Our families never talked about what happened when they were in the service, and I'm sure it had a great deal to do with PTSD.
Absolutely. I think
we
that's
didn't know that.
I think, and that's in a day and age of information, and so many people complain about the most minor details of their life.
Right.
The veteran is getting lost because that's not their life. They're taught to do the exact opposite of that. And I think now, and that's why I'm so thankful that Andy's here today, this is a big deal. It's time to start changing protocol. Their story needs to be told,
Yep.
and people need to understand that what they're going through is extremely real
Yeah.
and very dangerous to be misunderstood. When I hear people complaining about not flying a certain flag or not liking certain things or whatever, you only have those opinions because of these veterans. I mean, literally everything around you, your family, your vehicles, your house, everything that you love, you have because of the sacrifice that these men and women have made.
That's right.
And I really think people need to kind of take a step, just really let that sink in sometimes, I don't think that, again, that anybody's doing it on purpose.
No,
but we just,
I'm sure not.
If the word doesn't get out, it's not going to change. And I think that's a lot of where the suicide comes from, is they put so much on the line and getting so little in return. That's pretty upsetting. It's upsetting for me. I couldn't even imagine from our veteran standpoint.
And Andy, you look like the guy next door. You're gorgeous. That's my, you are
I agree.
handsome, but you're gorgeous. And no one would ever think to look at you that you had a problem that entailed a service dog.
Right. I get the confused look a lot when people ask me, you know, am I training him? And I say, no, he's actually mine. And then they're baffled,
Yes.
really, because I don't have any physical disabilities.
Right.
But
And we're so used to seeing a wheelchair or something of the sort, or a leg that's missing, or some, you know, we connect with the strangest of things for disabilities.
And-
So we just have to be reoriented.
And with that, I mean, you said the prosthetic limb. Somebody coming up and trying to pet him
Yeah.
is like going up and trying to pet somebody with a prosthetic limb.
Very good.
It would set that person off just like it sets me off.
Absolutely. Sure. Wow. It's how I'm mind-boggled with this. It's a lot to take in. How many people do you have now waiting for dogs?
We've about a half dozen, but I think we have quite a few more. And that's the other reason why we're trying to get the word out is there's a lot of veterans that are suffering in silence that don't even know that a program like this exists.
Right.
Honestly, like Ken and Cindy, I cannot speak highly enough about what they're doing. This is God's work through and through. Make no mistake about it.
Yes.
And
And they feel that way too.
yeah, but it's amazing that there's even this organization out there.
Yeah.
You know, and to be a part of that, I am just beyond honored. You know, and
And
that's
to
what I
have-
told Andy when I met him. I said, you know, I appreciate you doing all these things because for the veterans that do come out to the program and do successfully get their service animal and work as a team, for every one of them, there's 100 that are stuck at home that can't even pick up a phone or even ask for help. You know, and so
Sure.
when people ask me why can't they get over something, I ask them why can't you climb Mount Everest? Okay, there's certain limitations to what we can do, and
Yeah.
once PTSD kicks in, there is no cure for it.
No.
You have to learn how to mitigate the symptoms as best you know how.
Mm-hmm.
And so the big thing for the dog is, like I said, most of these veterans, they put the needs of that dog before themselves. So back to the story about my father,
Yes.
getting out of the house is the first step. You know, reintegrating into society. You do not want to be alienated by the people you live around. And so a big problem that I see with a lot of veterans is being re-implemented into their environment that they were in prior to being deployed. The person that went out on deployment is not the person who comes home.
Right.
And the friends that have known them since childhood and things like that think that they understand and they don't. You know, what they've been through, whatever, they couldn't see it in their wildest dreams.
Yeah. Wow. Well, getting back to your father, I have to say, when you were telling about the dog taking the blankets off the bed, my first thought was, you know, the dog wanted him to get up. Mm-hmm. But his first reaction was
He thought
the
the dog was
dog
toying
had to
with
go
him.
out.
Yeah. The dog, he thought the dog was toying with him quite a
But,
bit.
yeah.
But it, you know,
But
once,
whatever works.
Yeah, and
He did it.
The
Yeah.
other thing I like about the dogs very much as a trainer and an instructor is, to me, over all the years of training dogs and the thousands of dogs that I've worked with, is the dog tends to be a reflection of their owner. So when somebody's suffering from PTSD and they're not in good mental health or good standing, asking them directly is a big mistake. And this is, I think, what causes a lot of problems with relationships, both with spouses, children, and things like that. Because I know directly what it's like to live with somebody that has PTSD.
Yes.
And that's another thing that a lot of people don't talk about is
Right.
it's not just a one-person operation. It's anybody that's part of that person's life is all going to feel the effects of it. And I think that needs to get out more too, because there's a lot of spouses that, again, knew this person prior to being deployed and trying to get them to change back into the person that they fell in love with or whatever.
Right.
And they don't understand that it's a wound that's not going to heal the way you think it is. And so you need to learn how to operate around that in order to maintain the same relationship that once came so easy.
And a question that comes to my mind, too, that I want to say to you, Andy, do you live alone?
Yes, I do.
And does the dog help you to live alone? You know, or
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, absolutely.
excellent, yeah.
Before, I mean, even I had him up until a year of age without him being a service dog, and even then I was recluse. I didn't want to get out of the house, but now that I have him, I go out for him. I get him out, and I mean, I still live with the blinds closed because I feel safer that way.
Yeah.
And
Well, I thank you both so much. I can't thank you enough, honestly, for being here. This is a very necessary program. How do people get in touch with you, or will they get in touch with Cindy?
Ken and Cindy through Heroes in Transition.
Okay.
They can look them up online, and they're pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
But Cindy and Ken are the mother and father of this operation, and it's
Aren't they wonderful?
they're wonderful.
And they
people.
don't do it right here on the Cape. Just
No,
right here on
no.
the Cape. It's all over.
It's all over.
Amazing.
We're reaching out to more and more veterans every day, getting involved with more VAs, more therapists and things like that. So it's only growing by the day, and so the demand is getting very high, but I'm certainly up to the task. It truly is an honor to me every day that I wake up and am involved with these veterans.
Yeah. Well, it's a pleasure to have you both here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
I thank you very much. And this is your host, Robbie Haig, saying that we're so happy that you spent time here with us in downtown. And I have a feeling there'll be more on Heroes in Transition. As a matter of fact, we have another show coming up next week that we want you to be part of. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for being here.
Thanks again for having us.